The review from last session was that you were to have previewed a minimum of 10 homes per week. This is a consistency in real estate for the remainder of your career. Every week you need to be seeing homes. And today it's not necessarily physically possible, but you can go on and have a good look at what came up in the market in your area last week or yesterday or in general. So stay on top of it. Make sure you know what's on the market. This will help down the road tremendously. Second is, have you added a minimum of 10 contacts into your CRM? So part of this whole program is building your book of business, and that's what's going to escalate your career within real estate. And sometimes even if you've been in the business for 10 or 20 years, you can go back, and really you should be doing this almost every week, month, a couple times a year, where you really look at your CRM and see if you can add some more people to it. And I like the weekly. I really like at least once a week for you to sit in front of a computer for an hour or two and go through whether it's a phone call list on your phone or whether it's Facebook or some of the other social media things, and look to connect with somebody maybe you haven't connected with in a while, and add them to your CRM, which includes, and most importantly, the address. And we talked about that in the business plan. The last thing is, let's see your completed business plan and put it in your file. So if you've done the business plan from last session, send it over to your manager and let your manager keep that on file so we can review it, whether it be quarterly or half a year or yearly. So many people don't focus enough on execution. If you make a commitment to get something done, you need to follow through on that commitment. We talked a bit about that last session as well, and then making sure that you're following through on these things. So if you were in the business planning session last week and you really haven't put any of those things in place, or at least have a goal set for those items, then you're behind. And we always talk about this as we go forward in any of our sessions, is making sure you get caught up, because as soon as you get behind, it just starts falling apart. So get through at least one or two things on a business plan moving forward so that you can start implementing those things. So let's get right into representation. Representation, as you know, is probably, I would say it's most of the issues that come up in RICO complaints. Anytime that RICO hears a complaint, they always go back to the beginning of the process and did the real estate agent establish proper representation with their client? And as per RICO rules, the realtors work with buyers must be disclosed at the earliest opportunity. Now, we have something called a working with a realtor brochure, and that's the test number one. I just gave you the answer. So what is the document that must be filled out and have disclosed as we represent a buyer or provide customer service? And of course, that's the working with the realtor brochure. And that seems pretty basic, but it's there for a reason. We talk about it for a reason. And it's because we need to make sure that the buyer understands, or the seller in this either case, whether or not they're in a relationship that we're representing them or just providing customer service. So I just gave you the answer for number two. This is what happens in Zoom too. Without somebody in front of us, what are the two representation options for a buyer to choose from? What can a buyer choose in terms of representation? And one being client relationship, and the second being customer service relationship. And there's two big differences between the two. And often we don't understand that sometimes, especially when, working at an open house and the buyer comes through and you start asking them questions. Anytime you provide some feedback, or if you were to provide any recommendations to them, you could be establishing a client relationship right there by giving them advice. As soon as you start giving advice, you're working as a client, and that could be conceived implied consent or perceived consent in terms of providing them with the representation from a client perspective. So we have to make sure that you give them that option. And if you're just representing them as a customer, which you are at that point in time, that they sign off and say, yeah, no, I mean, you're just a customer at that point in time. And then you can have more discussions about the process. Customers are owed fairness, honesty, but there's certain disclosures that you're not going to go into. For example, if somebody walked into an open house and you're treating them as a customer, and then they want to put an offer together, you're going to do that, but you have to do it as a customer because you don't know if that necessarily is the best house for them. You're doing what you have to do for your seller because they're your client, but you don't. You would not be representing your client properly if you were to call a buyer a client, because you have not determined that that's the best house for them. You haven't shown them 5 to 10 other properties, right? So just make sure you make that distinction. If we, as a brokerage, represent 2 clients in a transaction, now 2 clients, this is very, very important, and we still get this wrong. Even seasoned agents get this wrong. So if we represent 2 clients, and this is in our brokerage in a transaction, it is called, anybody want to type it into the chat? What is it called if we represent 2 clients? So that's called multiple representation. There you go. I got lots of answers there. Now, multiple representation. If you're representing a client that you're selling their house, and you have somebody come through the open house and you represent them as a customer, is that multiple representation? Let's see if any of you can answer that. Is that multiple representation? Representing 1 client and 1 customer. And the answer is no, correct. And some will say yes. Yep, and that's okay. It's okay. It's okay because there is confusion with regards to that. You are not representing 2 people as clients, which now is multiple representation if one of them is a customer. That customer is not given the same service as your client. Now, you may treat them, and you should really treat them almost at that point in time as you're representing 2 clients. But typically in that situation, you're just going to put a clause in the offer conditional upon both the buyer and the seller's solicitor approval. And that gives the buyer some confidence that they have somebody that's in their side of the ring legally. But no, you're not going to go through the house and start saying, hey, this is not the right house for you at that point in time if they're just a customer. So you have to make that distinction up front and make sure everybody understands how it's being presented. And typically, we don't like one person necessarily in our company representing 2 people equally, especially in a multiple representation of providing client and client. In that case, our company policy is actually to split those 2 people with 2 agents. So grab an agent from the office, maybe your manager, and they can represent one side, and then we, as the other side of the agent, can represent the other. One can still be a customer, one can still be a client, both can be clients, but having that arm's length from the negotiation standpoint will make a big difference. So we talk about that a lot, and if you have any clarifications or need any clarifications on that, please talk to your manager, and you can go through that. And 2 clients, 1 buyer, 1 seller in the same brokerage is considered multiple representation. In our laws in Ontario, and this could change in the future, they're talking about it, but in our laws in Ontario, multiple representation is within the same brokerage. So we have to make sure at that point in time there's some arm's length things, and we can't give an indication to one side or the other as to what maybe even they pay for the property, right? So you're not supposed to get in there and negotiate. You're supposed to leave that up to the buyer and the seller to make their own decisions based on the information you provide, right? So having that multiple representation designation does change things. And we ask that, definitely take care in that situation, even in the same brokerage when you have 2 agents on either side. Okay. Make sure to ask any buyer early in the process these 3 things. And they should almost have these questions at the bottom of the working with the realtor brochure. So take note of them. It is in our documentation, and all this can be found on the Google Drive. First question, have you been working with another realtor? And we all know that usually gets asked, especially if they come through the open house. Are you working with anyone? The second question, most people get to, have you signed anything in writing with them? And if they have, they say, no, we didn't sign anything in writing. Well, let me ask you a question. Have you done any offers on any other properties in the last year? That's a good one. And that's the one that Treb always asks us when we go to arbitration as to who's representing who in a commission dispute. is, did you ask these 3 questions? Because if you know that they've put an offer in 2 months ago on another property, you're going to want them to double check with that other agent that they didn't sign anything, that there wasn't anything signed. So it's extremely important that we clearly define and communicate how we're providing representation when working with those buyers, okay? So now we talk about what is a buyer's kit, okay? So when you're representing or you're working with a buyer, whether it be customer or not, you need a package. Okay, and we do these packages physically in each office, which is stapled all the forms that you would need in representing a buyer. We also do it for sellers. We also provide it digitally on web forms. Okay, so where can you find that? Obviously at the office or in the transaction desk system that's integrated with your MLS system. In this case, it's actually web forms. Within web forms, anytime you start a new transaction desk, each one of these pre-done packages or templates are done for you, and they have all the forms associated with a transaction based on these criteria. Is it a commercial buyer package? Is it a commercial condominium resale package? Is it a commercial buyer tenant package? Listing package for commercial, residential, etc. So there's different packages and there's different forms for each package. So choose the right one within web forms and you'll get that full package of forms. That really, really helps you. It helps you as a seasoned agent. It helps you as a brand new agent because all the forms are in there. You can't really miss anything if you're doing it this way. Or again, if you're getting the physical package, because all the forms will be stapled in there as well at the office. Video training for web forms, in this case, transaction desk. By the way, it's the same thing, is located. We have it on train21.ca under videos, but also we're keeping all our videos on YouTube, and we've got a lot more loaded there now. So to even ask that you subscribe to our YouTube channel and make sure to go there and have a look. So if you type in web forms, I believe even if you type in transaction desk, we've got different ones, but they all are the same system. There has been a recent connection between Korea's web forms and Treb's transaction desk that have made it one. So you don't have to worry about being on 2 different systems. They're the same system regardless of which one you use now, which is excellent. Why use a buyer presentation? So we're going to get into buyer presentations now. And this is the most underutilized but most important step in a buyer working with a buyer, is the presentation. You need to educate your buyers. If you don't educate them and you don't provide your knowledge, essentially you're not providing them the value of being with a real estate agent, really. You're going to run into some pitfalls. You're going to bump into some questions down the road if you don't do the buyer presentation. That is going to cause the whole process not to be as smooth as possible. You want a smooth process. And to have a smooth process, you have to go through a list of questions as well as all the value proposition that you give as a realtor, so they know that that value is there and they utilize it and they're educated with the knowledge of how to put together an offer. When I started doing buyer presentations, specifically sitting down for an hour to 2 hours with buyers and going through the whole process, I was selling more homes quicker and happier clients, with happier clients and less pitfalls and less issues or problems. So we have developed a buyer presentation package for you and presentation, and I'm going to go through that with you. So how can you get this? It's in your Google Drive, and you're going to look under buyer presentation. There's 2 versions. There's one in PDF, which is just a general one, and then there's one that you can open in PowerPoint. So I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to go over to the Google Drive. I'm sure I'm going to show you how to get there. We'll go back to these resources later. In your Drive, which you should have access to, if you have any problems getting in, let us know. You should have a Heritage Group folder that has an agent folder in there, which is this one here, C21 Heritage Agents. And then within there, there's our marketing folder, and that has a lot of resources. Now, mine has colors on it because I put colors on it just to differentiate. Yours won't unless you add a color, but go into the marketing folder. And in here, you'll see different presentations. There's the buyer presentation here. There's also a tenant presentation, which is very similar if you're working with tenants. So down to the buyer presentation, and here's the different versions of it. You have the PowerPoint version, and then you have, actually this one I can take probably right off because that's 1.1 and this is 1.2. I'll do that after. But under the P, which is PowerPoint, you can click on that. Now, if you click on that, it's going to ask you if you want to open it with something. And I would open that with Google Slides because that gives you an ability to actually put different information, move it around, put your picture in, change your name. And this is a digital presentation that you'll have on your computer. And if you want it printed, we can get these printed for you as well. And you can send that off to Joseph in marketing, and he'll have a bunch of folders created or a bunch of presentations created. So I'm actually going to hit play and I'm going to go through it with you. This is how I would go through a buyer presentation. Fairly generic. Now, keep in mind, these presentations can last an hour to 2 hours. I'm not going to obviously go through a 2-hour presentation with lots of questions and everything. I'll just go through the general talking points of each slide. Now, can I just get somebody to mention on the chat that you can see my PowerPoint presentation? Done this in the past, and they're like, "Oh, can't see anything, Eryn."
Yep, I can't see anything.
No.
No.
Okay. Let me try it.
Oh, now they see it and I can't see it. Interesting. What's going on today?
No. Is everybody else so they're saying they can see it?
Oh.
I do see it.
Yeah. This is Eryn Richardson, broker owner. Oh, let's go back.
I can see it now.
I can see it. I can see it.
Okay, so I'll continue through the presentation. And in the first few slides are talking about yourself, and then you're talking about your company. And if you're a brand new agent, the company slides are very important because they have to get the confidence that you have a very, very powerful team behind you. 24/7 support through 6 different locations indicated here with over 680, it's now 700 sales professionals. We speak more than 25 different languages. We're consistently in the top in Canada, even worldwide, and we're now 32 years in the business. Go to the next slide. The global reach is a big slide because, again, it's another brand differential. Our brand being across the world with 57% of GTA residents being non-Canadian born, having that confidence and knowing that the global brand is there behind them gives them a much better experience. And when they're putting an offer in on a property that has a brand recognition like Century 21, they know that they're dealing with professionals and they have much more confidence buying. So it makes a big difference, not to mention all the network resources and global site that their listing is going to, let's say if it was a listing presentation, but they're going to be able to connect to across the world. The commitment, and everybody's commitment may be different, but here's some generic commitments, right? Listen, understand your needs. I'm going to be going through an online technology to understand that that's a big differential between myself and other people. Searching any off-market properties that may be a great fit, protecting you from pitfalls, long-term relationship, power of a top negotiator. Now, as I go through the slides any further, and I've added a new one here with the COVID, I really want you guys to center on your sales pitch, okay? And when you're doing a sales pitch, it sounds kind of salesy, I get it, but always think about selling the benefits over just a feature. Okay, so if, for example, you're going to go through any one of these features, the virtual consultation. Well, why is that a feature? Well, the feature of the virtual consultation is so that we can stay safe. I can go through my presentation with you as well as with any buyer that is interested in the property, and we can actually sell the property, seeing all the forms over the internet and that it's a smoother process. Therefore, people will feel more comfortable purchasing the property, benefiting you with a higher price, really, in the end. So if you're always going back to the benefit as being either something to save time, money, or make more money, usually the monetary amount's the easiest thing to go with motivation, but you'll know the motivation of your own buyer or seller depending on the conversation you had with them. So if a buyer, for example, is out of town, they need to buy something this weekend, the speed is a motivation of the purchase needs to happen quickly. So you'll center on things as features and sell the fact that it's going to make you going to be able to narrow things down and make the experience much quicker, but finding the best house for them, right? And that's how I'm going to talk as I go forward. So we're here for you as a nice social media slide that I've put in. I've put it into the presentation because I thought it showed well in there. And you can go through the different features of making sure that they feel that you have the ability to sell it through this difficult market, especially without necessarily the amount of showings that we're going to have. The mortgage approval, making sure, now I keep, by the way, going back. Sorry, this is more on the buyer's side. I was talking from a seller standpoint. So in this case, you're going to, throughout the process, being safe, showing properties, but maybe doing it virtually first and then narrowing it down, right? So the mortgage pre-approval on the buy end of a presentation is that making sure that they are ready to purchase. Katarina's on the line here, and she's from Centum Mortgage Professionals. She'll know the importance, obviously, of sitting down with a qualified buyer and ready to purchase, opposed to somebody who's just gone to the bank and said, "Oh yeah, don't worry, you know what? We've just kind of given you an idea what you can afford, but really haven't looked into the proper documentation and all the proper difference between a qualification and a pre-approval or a full approval on a house. There's differences, right? So just to sit down with somebody and say that they're qualified because they say they make $150,000 combined, this is what you can afford, is much different than going into credit checks and or just making sure that they have the funds available and getting actual, let's say, job letters, for example. So having them provide all that is going to make sure that they're confident. The other big thing is when they sit down with a mortgage professional, they put them through a whole presentation as well. So they get more information and they get more confidence in terms of purchasing. So this is sort of when I get into that question is, have you talked to anybody? And if you've just talked to your bank, there's a big difference between a mortgage specialist and the person, a teller or somebody, let's say a financial advisor that's sitting in one of those offices. Big difference, right? One works on commission and one works as a salary. One works 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. The other's 24/7. As you know, in sales and in buying and selling real estate, the importance of having somebody that you can contact anytime is very, very important, but also that's what they focus on. A mortgage specialist will focus on mortgages, and they do them very, very well. So I would say almost 80% of the time I would say let a buyer use their own bank. And they really wanted to use their bank. I said, okay, that's fine. You can use your bank. Here's some options. But if you just decide to use your bank, that's fine too. 80% of the time, there is a problem. There's usually something missing. Maybe they need an extension on financing because they couldn't get it done. There's a lot of issues that come up. So I typically, in this slide, have that conversation to make sure, and it's such an important slide, make sure, first of all, that they are qualified as well as pre-approved, but also making sure that they're working with somebody that I know. I'd almost get a name and have a conversation with them because you're a team putting this together. It's a team that's going to buy the house, and you need to be in communication with the full team. We talk about the deposit and making sure that those funds are readily available. Their mortgage specialists do the same thing. But some people, they say, oh, I want to buy the house. Okay, let's put an offer in. We got to move some money around. It won't be ready for 4 days. Well, that's difficult to put an offer in, especially in these times where you might be in multiple representation, et cetera. So we talk about deposit. We talk about closing costs. Closing costs are one that, especially new agent. I'm sure even if most of us think about the first time we dealt with a buyer, whether or not we went over closing costs was a big difference between a smooth transaction and somebody calling you 2 weeks before closing going, oh, I didn't realize I had to pay an additional $6,000 to $7,000 in closing costs. That's not part of the mortgage. So just make sure that you are you are explaining that. It's a very important slide as well. Government programs for first-time home buyers. If they're a first-time home buyer, here's the government programs. Talk to them about that. The home buyer checklist. Now, this is a very, very, I say everything's important. It's so important. This whole presentation, I got to tell you, is I can't stress how much better the transaction and you guys selling real estate when representing buyers, how smooth it will go and how many more homes you'll sell just by doing this, because all these questions are so important and it makes people feel really confident that you're looking out for them. So you go through these questions. Is this your first home purchase? Are you currently renting? Did you sign a lease? When does it end? Have you been pre-qualified? Can you access funds quickly? These are things you've already gone on in the slides, but again, your check mark, check mark, check mark. If you're a non-resident of Canada, you have funds in the Canadian bank account sufficient for your down payment. If you're currently, if you own your home, will you need to sell it in order to purchase this one? Whose names will you be purchasing this home in? That's an important one we tend to forget to ask. Do you need easy access to public transportation, schools, shopping? Are you buying a condo? And if that's the case, here's some additional questions. Here's a bunch of questions I'm just going to go through with you. Some of them are interesting and funny, and there's lots of stories behind each one and the reason why I ask it, but here's some questions. Do you know what UFI is? We always talk about that. The urea formaldehyde foam insulation, right? Aluminum wiring, hot water or electric baseboard heating, property where dogs or cat has previously lived. And that was a RICO case where somebody bought a house and found out that the dog had lived there, but it was against their religion to be in a home that had dogs in there. So they went to RICO and found the buyer's agent guilty of not providing the proper service because they didn't find out what services they needed to know, or what the buyer needed to be in or have as part of the buying experience. So in addition to a major renovation, if there's an addition on the back of the home and it's a deck, are you concerned? Like, there's a lot of decks that didn't go through permit process. Would that bother you if the deck that around the home wasn't, and then the next door neighbor, they said, sorry, we don't like your deck, and then you have to rip it off, right? So a secondary unit apartment may not comply with regulations. Vermiculite insulation, swimming pool, property with heritage design. Swimming pool, by the way, is a big one. If anybody is going to be putting in a swimming pool at some point in time in the purchase of their home, let's say 10 years down the road, they want a swimming pool, then you need to make sure that that house is zoned properly, has the right setbacks, and can actually have a swimming pool even. So these are important questions. Backing onto a train track or public highway, and there's others there that, and we think we've covered a lot of them, right? But as you get on with the conversation with these individuals, you'll notice that certain things are more important to them than others, and certain things do really bother them. Some of the other ones that are coming down further. So hydro towers, wind turbines, construction development, commercial industrial areas, past criminal activities, suicide, murder committed on the property. Would that bother you if somebody had died in the house? Because if that's the case, I'll put a clause in there asking them if they know of that. Paranormal activity. I mean, these are funny questions. You can laugh about it with them and kind of chuckle, but the reality is, if your home has been known as the house on the street that had something happen, or there was activity there that, then you want to know about that. Maybe it wouldn't bother you, but some buyers, oh no, yeah, forget it. Make sure that clause is in there, right? And then is there any other haves or have-nots that affect the decision to buy? And this gives them the opportunity to bring up anything that wasn't on the list. And if you fill this form out, every single transaction you do working with buyers, even if something comes up 10 years down the road and it goes in front of a committee or a RICO or court case, you can show 10 years worth of buyer checklists in your files of every time you sat down with somebody and asked them these questions and they got the opportunity to tell you. So if something comes up later on and they said, yeah, I wanted a fence around a property because we had a dog. Well, I asked you if there was anything else that would, and we went through this and there wasn't anything, and and they said, well, I'm still going to take you to court. I mean, that will help you. But in the end, it's probably not going to get that far because most of those issues would have already been discussed. Not only will, from a legal standpoint and liability standpoint, help you, but the process, right? think about all these questions that you've now asked the buyer. And if they've purchased a house before, I don't think their other real estate agents ever gone through this type of list with them before. So they're going to be like, wow, you guys really do take care of your clients. And, this blows the other experience out of the water. The must-haves or it's actually in my way, I can't read it. Must-haves or something your home. Anyway, so the must-haves in your, so these are things that you go through and just check with them, right? There's that analogy, buyers are liars, and you'll never say that in front of them. But this sheet helps you determine whether or not, and it's kind of funny because you fill it in when you first sit down with them, and then you show it to them when they purchase the property and say, let's see how many check marks you guys ended up with. And it's funny because you go through this and they wanted a semi-detached or townhome in a certain area for a certain price. And, they wanted at least 3 bedrooms. And then they end up buying a condo in the city with 2 bedrooms, et cetera. I mean, that's what we talk about when we talk about that adage with the buyers are liars, is sometimes they just don't know what they want. And then they start seeing houses and they buy something completely different. But this will give you the opportunity at least to focus in and, let them know you're listening. My home finder system. Now, this is something you take in, leave. It's up to you. I put this in there when I used to sell, but we can identify areas that you're interested in, and I can personally speak to those homeowners to find out whether or not they're interested in selling if there's nothing that seems to be on the market. If it's really important they're in a school district, but there's nothing on the market in the area that they want to live in, I'll go out and door knock, and I'll find a house that's interested. I'll even ask them to make potentially write a letter and even put a picture of the family and say, here's the family that wants to buy your house. Are you interested? Would you be interested in possibly selling? This is an excellent system for them, as a great opportunity to, give extra value as well. Open houses. So I talked to them about open houses. The fact not right now, there's virtual open houses, but in a typical market, there's lots of open houses. And we know that they're going to probably want to go through some of them. And if they're out and about and they go through some, take a stack of business cards and just, if you want to go through that home without getting bugged with a ton of questions and having that agent try and sell you on everything, just give them one of my cards. They'll back up, right? And tell them to contact me if they have any questions. And it gives them that freedom. Okay. We also have access to our own, can give you access to our own personal MLS. Now, this is available through Stratus, so it's only for TREB members, but they have something called Collaborate. And Collaborate allows the buyer to search all the on-market properties within TREB's system, get instant notification the second they comes up on the market, which Realtor.ca doesn't do. As well, it keeps them engaged. I mean, I'm going to tell you off to the side as agents, it keeps them engaged with your system. So they're not getting all this other marketing and all this other stuff with listing agents. But also it's a great communication tool. It's mobile friendly. You can have notifications set in order to provide them with additional communication, kind of like Facebook, where, everything they do, if they log in, they see a few properties, they comment, they like, it's all on a nice dashboard for you. So it's a really good communication tool between yourself and the buyer. So you'll show them how to log on to that and how to start searching using Collaborate. Access to the property history. If they're interested in knowing specifics on a property because they're really interested in it, I can provide a report. Keep in mind, there may be costs associated with this as a realtor. So you let them know there may be some costs associated with me pulling a full report for you, but I will do that as soon as you know that you're interested in it. And that's okay. And I can find out, how many times it's been bought and sold over the last 10, 20 years, the full information history on it, even the square footage that MPAC, who assesses taxes, or they'll tell us what they think the square footage is. So it might be accurate, maybe it's not. So there's some good reports, as well as zoning information. There's even geographic area reports that we can print for them in terms of demographics. So percentage of homes that are rented opposed to owned. There's even religious backgrounds in terms of who's living in that area, age demographics, whether or not they're even, Stats Canada will tell you, what percentage have a university education in a certain area. So it's kind of interesting. We also have an exclusive network of listings that are not on market with Broker Bay. And this is a big one. I really center on that for people and buyers that, it's not just what's on Collaborate and on MLS, right? It's also what we have access to. And there's now almost half of TREB is going to be, or at least has access to this network. And if they're looking at using somebody else and they're not part of Broker Bay, that's a big advantage, but also most of them don't even use it. So the people that are on Broker Bay don't even know it's there. So here's an extra added value for you, that you can search all these extra listings that are exclusive. Oops. Sorry, guys. I went a little too far. There we go. The plain language forms. Okay. So in TREB's MLS, they have a little section there for forms explained. And it's the plain language of all the legal forms that they would be signing, whether it would be representation or be the offer. So it explains those forms, every clause, in just layman terms. So that really, really, really helped me when I first started printing off those and having them and giving them to the buyer or the seller, so that they're more knowledgeable as to what forms they're signing and what it means when they're signing the forms. When we go to put the offer together, we're going to discuss things like price, deposit, closing date, inclusions, exclusions, rental equipment, conditions that we're going to put in there to protect you, survey. And this is all going to come from your buyer checklist. And I just explain that to them. The presentation of the offer, I like to present in person if possible, and I explain the reasons why. Every presentation is unique, and I'll use my expertise to negotiate the best possible deal for you. Obviously, negotiation's part of it. I think it's the next slide, getting into negotiations. So knowing that you do want the lowest price for the property, and the seller wants the highest, there's going to be a negotiation, and how we start that negotiation, whether it be because I had to fax in there or scan an email in the offer, or whether or not I present in person, which is hopefully the case. But each agent does deal with it differently. And because, I have the ability to do X, Y, Z, and I go through sort of my history. Obviously, if you're a brand new agent, you're going to explain the importance of certain systems that you've learned with the negotiation process and presenting in person. Things like writing a little handwritten letter to the sellers and having that ready, or just having a deposit check ready and certified along with the offer. These little things go a long way. So I'll be prepared, and I'll show you the different things we're going to do to make sure that we present that offer in the best of light, but also be able to get it lower in price. Because the more confident they are in you as a buyer, the more likely they will be selling that property at a lower price. If you're a high risk, they want to make sure it's high reward. So we take away that risk and make sure that that's not part of why they wouldn't come down in price. So I go through that. I do talk about, I happen to have something right in the middle of my screen that I can't see my titles. There we go. Multiple offers. I moved it. Multiple offers. Be prepared. So this is a whole section that you're going to explain the fact that if you're in a multiple offer time period, and that right now I think it's important to let them know that you might be putting an offer in along with somebody else. And if that's the case, that you're going to need to explain that process and be prepared for that. So we talked about some of the things that we, making sure that you have a mortgage letter, maybe even a letter from the buyers to go along with it, saying how much they love the house, having a bank draft ready in strong conditions. There is protection now with a new bill, and I talked to them about that eliminates phantom bidding, so that they can be confident that there is actually 2 other offers or 3 other offers. And I will definitely try and present in person where possible. And then there's a whole dialogue I'll go through with them with regards to multiple offers, and it comes up as to making sure that we put together the best possible offer and give them the best possible advice as we go through that. The home inspection, I talked to them about home inspections, making sure that they are ready for that. And I'm going to call it negative. I mean, it's a negative experience in a lot of cases because it's pointing out all the deficiencies in a home. So I explain that to them. There's going to be a lot there. Every home has it, right? There's things that weren't done 100% every single time. Even brand new homes are not 100% ready. Even from a safety standpoint, there's some things that got missed. There are fans that are installed in the upstairs bathroom going right into the attic sometimes instead of going right outside. And we can't see what's in the attic. So home inspections are important. And don't worry about, getting into multiple offers and removing home inspections, because I let them know we can still have a home inspection, whether it be before we present the offer. We can still bring a home inspector through. Most sellers allow this in the home, especially if they're holding off offers. So we don't have to not have one, right? So don't worry about putting a lot of emphasis on how important it is, because it is very important that they know what they're purchasing. Even if they purchased something, they took the risk and didn't have a home inspection, I'd still suggest having a home inspection. It educates the buyer as to what they're purchasing, and it helps them maintain it through the life of the home over the next 10, 20 years. So I explain all that. Our system, it's called Heritage Concierge. It's a platform, you'll know it as MoveSnap. So it's Heritage Concierge by MoveSnap. And we give them a portal to allow them the ability to go in and have almost like a digital platform for moving. It takes them through the full process of changing all their driver's license and government issued information. It takes them through a series of all the steps needing to be done through the move process. It really makes their experience goes a lot smoother and provides a lot of value for them. So I explain that to them, and that will be sent off as soon as we have a firm deal. Talk to them about the buyer and the buyer visits with the lawyer. Top 3 lawyers I can recommend. We'll prepare all the documents and send that over to the lawyer. Any additional visits before closing, we can go through the home again if that was in the offer, and I'll make sure that is in the offer if that's important. But be prepared through that weird time in between purchasing a home, getting all excited and all of a sudden going, oh my God, what did we do? There may be buyer's remorse. So I talk to them about that and prepare them that, not to worry about that. And the house isn't going to show the way it did the day that we saw it during a buyer's visit. And that's where you get a lot of people disappointed. This isn't the house I bought. Oh my God, this is so, they didn't even clean up after themselves and everything. So you can have that happen. So make sure you explain that to them. 1 to 2 weeks, before closing, you'll meet with the lawyer and they'll give you that list of things to do and to bring them on the closing date. And on closing date, and again, this really helps prepare a closing day, because they're kind of going, what's going on, right? It's 11 o'clock in the morning and I still haven't received a phone call. Do I get my keys at 12 or, well, no, it's going to be, typically anytime between 12 and 6. I don't get the notification. You will, your lawyer's office will call you. So please give me a call. And when you get to the house, give me a call and let me know what condition it's in. And, you'll be picking up your keys typically at the lawyer's office, and the seller may be late. So be prepared for that. If a seller is late and it's 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you have your keys, that doesn't mean that you have the right to kick them out of the house and say, get lost, it's my home. So allow them to, remove their stuff. Hopefully they do a nice clean for you. But sometimes that day is very stressful for everyone. So try and work with them on that if they happen to be a bit late, and try not to move all in one day too, right? Is it possible that we could bridge finance for a few days? It may cost $1,000. It may be, we'll find out how much it costs from the mortgage specialist. It may cost a little bit, but it might be a really worthwhile spend. I've had a lot of buyers come back to me and thank me for that, suggesting the couple days to close. If somebody tries to get a move done all in one day, it can be pretty stressful. So that $1,000 or however much it is might be well worth it. I talk about Centum Mortgage Professionals as our arm of a part of our team. And if they need anything from a mortgage or financing standpoint, that we have them in our arsenal. And that, again, it allows us to really work as a team on the project or on the procedure of purchasing a home, And when you have that teamwork and everybody's communicating, it just goes so much smoother, and it's such a better experience for a buyer. And then, of course, all the different discounts we provide. There's an endless vacation rental. That's what I've used in the past as my thank you, is that, you know, take a vacation on me. There's a website I give them, and they can go on and search for homes for the next couple, or not homes, vacations, as well as searching for home, that they can take as a nice vacation, maybe 6 months, a year, however many, let's say, months afterwards they want to go on it. I just give them it for the life of the next 10 years. I say, hey, listen, anytime, go on there. I'll treat you guys to a week away, and it can be anywhere that's on those on that website. And that's it. So it's a pretty good overview of the whole process, going right back to the beginning. It's a nice package for them to hold on to and reference if they have any questions afterwards. And I can't tell you how much more impressed a buyer is and ready, and when they go through this process. So I'm going to get out of there. There we go. And go back to our slides and talk a little bit more about, there's your buyer's checklist, and that was in the presentation. And then what's the difference between working with a tenant and a buyer? So same presentation, okay, is available in the Google Drive. It's called tenant representation. Same idea. It just has a little bit more information about tenancy and whatnot. And just take the opportunity to have a look at that, because I think, again, it's very, very important. The whole purpose, I think, of working with a tenant is, one, they're going to possibly purchase in the future. Okay, so it'll come back to you when, if the process, you know, you put them into let's say a rental, and they love the process, they're going to come back and use you again. They're also going to recommend you to others, but they're only going to recommend you if they know you're really competent. And some people rush through a tenant procedure because you don't make a lot of money with representing tenants, but don't look at it like that. Over service a tenant, and they will give you referrals for purchase and sell. Okay, so very, very important to know. So away from the actual tenant presentation, we always, or tenant and buyer presentations, we always put in a little extra in each of our seminars with the first, 6 sessions of Quick Start, in order to get some work done on your marketing and getting you up and ready as your business plan. So right now, because it's the 3rd session, and I think that the majority of people have put together a good list of people, whether it be, with just email addresses or all the addresses, you're going to prepare a introductory letter that's, again, available on the drive, and the information's there how to get it. And just let them out either that you just had a career or just got into real estate, or the fact that you've had a change in brand, maybe you've moved from brands, but an announcement letter to go out physically to the ones you have addresses for, and then emailed if you just have the email addresses. So this is the time to do that, and we talk about that. We talk about any of the discount programs. Each of these programs are available again in the Google Drive that you can email to them. So any one of these discounts, whether it be you want to get a contractor pricings at the Brick or Appliance Canada, et cetera, et cetera. And then we get to our homework. And the homework's going to continue to see homes and make sure that you know your market, add more people to your CRM. Obviously schedule the next session, which will be next Monday. And we'll send out the invites for that. And then have that buyer presentation done. Print it out or hand it into your manager digitally so that they can see that you have that. Again, we can put it in your file. And if you have a buying presentation, and then the next one's going to be obviously listing presentation, those are the 2 people you're going to be working with. Obviously, there's tenants and landlords as well. But that process of being organized and having a full presentation ready to go when somebody wants to buy or sell is going to be very, very useful when you are working with them. So just having satisfied customers isn't good enough anymore. You really want to have a booming business, and you have to create raving fans. This is the purpose of having these presentations. If you're going to create raving fans, anybody can go out and say, this is a home, do you want to buy it? Okay, I'll fill in the paperwork and sign here. Oh, congratulations, you just bought a home. That's not an experience. And if it is, it's not a great one. You want to make sure that you give them as much knowledge and expertise along the way, make it an amazing experience. And of course, they're going to thank you and give you referrals left, right, and center. And that's when I'm going to open this up. There are a few other resources on the drive, especially when we're talking about COVID and what we're going through right now. So we can talk about that if anybody has any questions. Working with buyers was today's topic, and we will chat about that. Let's see if there's anything that comes up here. And if anybody wants to unmute themselves, they can unmute themselves as well. Just so you know, all the training that we're going through, so all the sessions 1 through 6 are available in the Quick Start program in the Drive. We've done the Introduction to Core Systems, developing the business plan, working with buyers. Next week, we're going to talk about the first offer, how to put together your first offer. Then we're going to go into working with sellers, so the listing presentation with sellers and actually listing a house as well. So that's the sessions we go through. And we always refer back to the beginning in terms of some of the systems as well as the business plan that we'll continue to talk about, because obviously it's a lot easier to work with buyers if you have them. If you don't have any buyers, you don't have any listings, you know, that's a problem. So we'll be talking about that as well. I don't see anything coming up in the chat window.